Candela Obscura, the new game from Critical Role and Darrington Press, is finally here. After months of hype and short-term campaigns from Matt Mercer and Spencer Stark, we finally get our hands on the core rulebook for the next big immersive role-playing experience. Can this possibly live up to the hype? Is this just a cynical cash grab? And most importantly, is this even really a game at all? If you're new to the channel, I'm Ginger Fraser, and welcome to the Black Lodge Games review and autopsy of Candela Obscura. If you're hoping to get this game for Christmas, I've got some bad news for you. Candela Obscura is incredibly poorly designed, to the point that I would consider it fractally broken. After looking very closely at the game system and underlying assumptions of its design, this game was built with multiple foundational ideas that are in conflict with each other. It is confused about what it wants to be and completely misunderstands the nature of role-playing games and the experiences that they produce. We're going to examine all of this in detail, and to do that, we're going to do a deep dive on the mechanics of the game. On its surface, Candela Obscura is a sort of gothic noir occult investigation game that is less Call of Cthulhu and more Penny Dreadful. You'll create characters who are part of an esoteric secret society dedicated to protecting the city of Newfair from the corrupting forces of magic seeping up through the ruins of the ancient and cursed Undercity. The focus of this game is on creating a memorable story. All of the mechanics, at least the ones they deigned to actually include in the book, are meant to keep the narrative moving and the plot and the adventure exciting. This game uses a D6 dice pool system that is broken into 3 separate drives that each contain 3 types of action that you can choose from in any given circumstance. These actions are a sort of meta skill that encompasses a broad category of types of actions you can undertake in the world. For example, strike involves everything from punching someone, breaking down a door, to moving something heavy or knocking it over. For each dot in a given action, you get 1 die for your dice pool. To resolve an action, you roll your dice pool and take the highest result. On a 6, you succeed with no cost. If you get a 4 or a 5, you succeed, but there's some sort of complication that comes along with your success. A result of 1 to 3 means that you outright failed. Now, you can manipulate this dice pool by spending points of drive. Drive represents your character's ability to push themselves past their natural limitations. For each additional point of drive that you spend, you get an additional die in your pool, increasing your chance of success. Additionally, certain actions you choose may be gilded, meaning that the dice you add are of a different color. This allows you to actually choose the result of a gilded die over the default highest number you rolled with a regular die. This may mean that you forego a success for a mixed success or a failure on the gilded die, but in return, you replenish some of your spent drive points. In addition to the gilded dice, you have what are called resistances, which allow you to push back against results that you aren't happy with. By burning a resistance point in a given drive, you can re-roll one of your dice and hopefully take a higher result. One of the final ways in which you can manipulate the dice pool is by having other players contribute to your roll. This represents those other players assisting your character in the action. They do this by spending a point of their own drive and adding gilded or non-gilded dice to your pool. Each character archetype or occupation can have a special skill that may add bonus dice in particular circumstances, and they may have gear that can either add or gild dice within the pool. After all is said and done, your dice pool can never exceed a total of 6 dice. As far as taking damage, your characters have 3 different pools of health. The traits are body, representing physical injuries, brain, representing mental stress, and bleed, which denotes how much magical corruption you've encountered. If you take more than 3 marks in any single category, your character is incapacitated and gains a new scar. The cost of gaining a scar is that one of your skills will be reduced by 1, and that die is transferred to a different skill, representing a change in your character after the traumatic experience. If you gain more than 3 scars, you are dead. While there are some extra details here and there, that is the sum total of the game system, and that is actually a huge problem. Now, at first glance, this might seem like a straightforward conflict resolution mechanic. You have abilities, you roll those abilities, and you either succeed or fail. A mixed success adds some narrative flavor to the mix and prevents anything from being a simple binary outcome. For instance, you may be sneaking on a rooftop and doing a stealth roll where you get a mixed success. So your character is not fully detected, but maybe you accidentally kicked a roof shingle that clatters on the ground and raises the guards' suspicions. The problem is that the guards can't actually act in this game. The rules are entirely based around the actions that you take in the world, and the world simply responds to your actions. This is a big misunderstanding of why we even have rules in role-playing games in the first place. Rules are there to simulate the imagined world, not simply the player character actions within it. This is why in games like D&D, there are systems for combat. Note that I didn't say systems for characters to engage in combat, but systems for combat as such. Combat mechanics apply universally to all characters in the world, whether they are player characters, non-player characters, or monsters. When you get in a fight in D&D, the GM role-plays the enemies. They try to take tactical advantages. Their attacks function on the same die roll as your PCs, and their weapons deal damage in the exact same way that your weapons deal damage. This is how you create fair, non-arbitrary outcomes in the game. It actually creates a level of trust between the players and the GM because everyone in the world of the game is subject to the same universal standards, not arbitrary fiat or favoritism. This simply is not how it works in Candela Obscura. This game has no universal combat system, nor any objective way to handle damage. In the GM section of the book that explains how to run the game and how to run combat, characters take marks or damage in their various health pools when they attack enemies and roll either a mixed success or an outright failure. This system has no neutral and objective way of calculating damage based on enemy or weapon type. It is solely at the discretion of the game master.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Whose Line Is It Anyway, the show where everything's made up and the points don't matter. That's right. The points are just like how wrong your girlfriend is when you're having a fight with her.
This lack of a system makes it impossible for the GM to make a fair ruling on damage. The whole game demands that the players and the GM have a high degree of trust with one another in service of telling a collaborative story, but the lack of mechanics fundamentally erodes that trust, since even an honest GM has no guideposts for fairly determining any negative outcome. It is all at his discretion and whim. When you can't trust that the GM is playing fair, you can't trust that your choices actually mean anything. The lack of combat mechanics are why the game explicitly tells you that there are no rules for player versus player combat. In fact, the manual tells you that if this comes up in the game, it is your responsibility as the GM to come up with the rules yourself. You paid $40 for someone to tell you to fill in the blanks, and this is not an attempt to preserve good faith at the table or prevent hurt feelings. It is simply an utter failure to design a complete game that in any way simulates the imagined world that your characters inhabit. Since the game does not include rules for NPCs to engage in combat, players can't actually engage in combat either. And it's not like combat between players is some remote edge case that doesn't come up in the game. I mean, it happened on the fucking show already, and the game designer had to pull something out of his ass on the spot to make it work.
One example that I'll give is there was PvP in our season.
And I'm gonna crack the butt of the rifle over her head.
So as I see that he's about to lunge, I want to take the knife and jab it in his neck.
And PvP specifically in the book it says that is not part of this game. If you're going to make it part of the game, it is up to you to adjudicate exactly how that plays out. And so during the show, I made some calls about how it would work.
In this recent interview, Spencer Stark admitted that the show had started filming before the rule set was even complete.
During the development of the game, we were already in production on the first chapter of Candela. So there are things that were being built as the first chapter was being filmed. And I think that having that kind of flexibility to watch what happens and let people explore and then adapt based on what is happening on screen is a really fun challenge.
So the show serves two purposes. The first is as a pure entertainment product for you to enjoy, and I actually don't see a problem with that part of it at all. The issue is that this entertainment product is not an actual play of the game. They've admitted that they don't even need a game to do what they're doing on the show. And this is what makes it clear that what they're doing is actually a very cynical cash grab. They are selling you on the promise that if you play this game, your table will look something like Matt Mercer's. This is a bait and switch. And not only are they not even really playing a game in the first place, this game is incapable of generating an experience or story that looks anything like what you see on the show. The show is a commercial for something that doesn't exist. And this is possibly the worst lie that Critical Role has told to gamers. The truth is, RPGs are not about telling a story. At its core, role-playing is putting yourself in the mindset of a character and making choices as that character within the world of the game, and treating those choices in the world as if they were real. This requires mechanics that neutrally decide the outcomes of actions that you take. Your choices are made under conditions of uncertainty. You don't know what is coming next. You don't always know the stakes of a choice before you make it. That's what makes these games exciting. This produces situations where you make choices in character spontaneously that lead to outcomes that you couldn't have possibly predicted beforehand. These are often dramatic and intense, yet they don't conform to any sort of predefined narrative structure. There is no story outside of the choices of your characters. The story is something that you look back on after it has happened. It's something that emerges spontaneously from your interactions with the other players, monsters, NPCs, etc. But this story is not the fundamental experience of the game. The activity you're engaged in is role-playing. What that produces is something called immersion. And this is the unique experience that the tabletop role-playing hobby produces as a medium that no other medium can. Not novels, not TV, not movies or plays. In an immersive game, you are so invested in the moment, so intensely engaged in your character that you can act spontaneously as that person. You can feel what that person feels. You can make real choices and have a real effect in the world of the game. And you can trust that the outcomes of those choices aren't arbitrary. This is why simple mechanics like tracking your torchlight in a dungeon crawl are so important. They aren't simply arbitrary bean counting exercises. They're there to simulate an important resource in the world of the game. If you're 3 levels deep in a dungeon and you run out of light, the experience shifts from simple exploration of a dangerous place to a terrifying fight for your life. Imagine being in a cave full of horrors and you can't see a thing.
We need to go. We need to get through. We need to get out of here.
No, don't go there. That's where they were. That's where they were.
That's the way out. That's
Wait, come.
No, please stop it.
No, this way.
Stop it.
We have to come this way.
Tess,
We have to come this way. Someone's down. That's
Stop
what
it.
I'm not going back.
A simple rule can create scenes of intense drama that have zero relation to any of the rules of literature or cinema. It's about the experience in the moment at the table. Or put yourself in the shoes of Frodo overlooking Mordor. Don't think about the movie you've seen or the books you've read where you know the outcome of the journey. Pretend you are Frodo. The rest of the pages of the book have not been written yet, and the only way those pages do get written is by you making choices. You have an almost insurmountable journey ahead of you, and chances are you aren't going to survive. The not knowing is the experience of role-playing. All you have are your choices going forward and the consequences that flow from them. Don't view the game from the perspective of a director or a writer. Feel the visceral feelings that your character is experiencing in the now, and know that you have agency. The fact that you can make meaningful decisions is what distinguishes role-playing from all other mediums. The crime of Candela Obscura is that at a foundational level, it gets all of this wrong. Candela is explicitly a game about telling stories. Its mechanics are there only to serve narrative outcomes, and it robs you of any meaningful choices or agency. This is a deeper issue than just lacking a combat system. It's a foundational philosophical mistake and points your actions in the wrong direction from the very outset. The rules of Candela Obscura, its very skeleton, do not serve to simulate the world of gothic or cosmic horror. They serve to simulate being an audience member of Critical Role. What this game is ostensibly trying to do is to bring the storytelling and narrative flair of the Critical Role entertainment show to your tabletop game. It is selling you the dream of creating incredible and interesting stories, but gives you systems that prevent them from ever happening. So how does Candela rob you of this agency? One of the biggest flaws in this system is the fact that whenever the GM calls for a roll, they inform you beforehand what the stakes are and how dangerous the outcome is likely to be if you fail. This eliminates any uncertainty about what's going on in the world, and it takes you out of the moment in the spontaneity of the roleplay. This is explicitly done so that players can optimize their roles before they take action. This takes you out of the perspective of a character and puts you into the shoes of someone stacking the deck before the hand is dealt. Oh, this is a high-stakes roll. I'll choose my gilded action, spend some drive, and oh, you guys, can anyone think of a way to help me? Well, sure, I can spend a point of drive to help you out. Me too. Awesome, that takes my dice pool to the maximum. Seeing as I have 66, I'm statistically going to succeed now, and if I don't, I have my resistances to fall back on. This isn't role-playing. This is playing Bop It with your friends. You're all contributing to making the success of any action nearly guaranteed. Your enemies will never attack you because they can't. The only way they can succeed in harming you is if you take an action and fail. The scars system explicitly protects you from death, and the only situation in which your character's life is ever in danger is if you have taken 3 scars previously, which amounts to getting 3 get-out-of-jail-free cards. Nothing is at stake until you've expended those 3 wishes. But the game doesn't even recommend that you keep playing the character at that point. If you've taken 3 scars, it is recommended that you retire the character and they become an NPC lightkeeper. Your abject failure results not in death or disgrace, but a promotion. And this collaboration in pushing bennies around between the party to optimize success is just a way of turning the party into a giant Mary Sue. One of the cardinal sins of creating a narrative. Stories about people incapable of failure are garbage. They offer nothing to even be entertained by. It not only prevents you from role-playing, it ensures that you tell the worst story ever written every time. Even worse than this is the final section of the book, which is dedicated to giving the worst GM advice anyone has ever committed to the page. The core of constructing an adventure in Candela Obscura revolves around constructing a mystery plot. It explicitly demands that you carefully plan out a structured narrative with distinct named phases of the adventure, like exploration, escalation 1 and escalation 2, climax and epilogue. You are told what narrative beats should occur in each phase, how to lay clues for the party to pick up on, and stresses the importance of creating the one clue that the party needs to find in order to advance. This is called railroading. There are 1,000 YouTube videos about why railroading is the antithesis of fun in RPGs. It's nothing but a roller coaster for your players. They can't deviate from the GM's pre-planned narrative, and any attempt to do so immediately breaks the goal of the game. And this is how you get disillusioned players. When players sense that they have no real agency, they start testing the limits of the world that you've set up for them. They seek any invisible wall and try to knock it down because they intuitively know that this is the only way that they can do anything meaningful in the game. This is the poison that kills the hobby for players. Candela Obscura sets these rails and creates these walls intentionally. It's a perverse inversion of what a tabletop role-playing game is supposed to be, and is another sign that what Critical Role is doing on their show is not playing a role-playing game. You are not at the table to create a performance for an audience. You are here to be in character and to make sincere choices in a dangerous world and experience the consequences of your actions. When you do that, you end up with a story that is so interesting that you couldn't have possibly thought it up beforehand. This is why any good campaign in a role-playing game is a bad narrative. It's the unstructured nature of the game that produces these incredible moments that live with you forever. It's the story of your memories of an incredible fantasy world adventure, not a creative writing project at a community college. And unfortunately, those community college writing class stories are probably somehow better than what you can produce by playing this dogshit game. Now, there's a lot more that I could go on about related to the storytelling mechanics, but this destruction of your ability to roleplay in a role-playing game is the cardinal sin and fundamental flaw of this product. You have been sold a false bill of goods, and you should not be happy about that. Critical Role has lied to you and ripped you off and stolen your money, and if you defend them, they're just going to do it again. You're better than this, but they aren't. And if you're thinking, sure, maybe the game system sucks, but the setting sounds cool, and maybe I could use that in my own game, I've got really bad news for you. But that'll be the subject of our next video in this series, where we will be doing a deep dive on the world of New Fair and how it's been stripped of any meaningful conflict for your characters to overcome. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned.
Not going back!
Do you think he's a Lightkeeper now?